world is such a diverse place, with all kinds of people to interact and learn from. Forming human connection is what brings people together, and it's through our interactions and our relationships that we get to learn about one another and become close to each other. And because the world is so diverse, we end up seeing people that may look different or on the surface seemingly have no similarities in culture, interests, or personality. If you were able to observe a single person without knowing anything about them, what kind of assumptions would you make about them? Whether you have any positive or negative thoughts about them, the fact that you made any kind of connections or assumptions about them comes from our preconceived notions. Our preconceived notions allow us to make judgment on another person without getting to know them, which can instill a sense of familiarity if you find similarities, or a sense of reluctance because of their differences and the lack of knowledge about them as a person. On the lower end of that spectrum, it can be hard to make connections with others because of that reluctance. It's normal for people to be doubtful of the unknown, and sometimes it may even be more difficult to form connections because of previous bad experiences that cause us to create these assumptions about others. And only through the dismissal of our preconceived notions and interactions with others can we truly begin to create long-lasting connections and bring about acceptance of one another. Kimi no Kaketeru Tokomo Suki, or I Also Like Your Flaws, is a one-shot written by Kinji Kuraika and illustrated by Yuuki Hotate, and it encapsulates the formation of friendships and how people with different social mindsets interact with one another. The entrance ceremony marks the moment of a new school life, new possibilities, and new people to meet. But for a person like Hotaru Matsudo, the main protagonist, it's hard or even nerve-wracking to settle into a new setting like this. During the entrance ceremony, there's a girl that catches his eye because of her beauty. She notices Hotaru and decides to wave at him, much to his surprise at both the attempt to make a friendly interaction and the fact that she has two disabilities. It's made very clear that Hotaru has some form of social anxiety from his behavior and inner thoughts after the ceremony, having his head down, showing a large sense of awareness, recounting past trauma, and thinking about that girl he saw. Just in this one page alone, there is so much overthinking that allows the reader to understand the kind of mindset that Hotaru has. Hotaru is approached by the girl from the entrance ceremony, Rui Hasumi. Her demeanor is very outgoing, and Hotaru even comments that she's gal-like, a stark contrast from Hotaru's personality. Two ends of a personality spectrum that are coming together. Doubtful of his friendly interaction with Rui, Hotaru believes that she'll just forget about him, and even reveals his inferiority complex, which fuels part of his lack of self-esteem and social anxiety. Contrary to his beliefs, however, Rui is excited to see him and asks Hotaru to hang out with her after school, much to his surprise and his immature imagination. While the two hang out, Hotaru makes a note of Rui's extroverted personality despite her disabilities, and it's during their time at the playground where Hotaru's pity for Rui's physical disabilities is revealed, and it's clear from his reaction towards the teasing of Rui from other students. This isn't to say that it's necessarily negative, but it partially plays into Hotaru's perception of Rui, which becomes apparent later on in the story. Rui notes Hotaru's behavior towards her, noting how he's unsure of how to deal with a person of her likeness and that he never makes eye contact with her. Her observation of Hotaru's behavior is akin to how many people with social anxiety may act. Sometimes it's like trying to find the right dialogue options because you don't want your relationship to be negatively affected. As Hotaru's backstory is revealed, we learn about the bullying that he endured in the past. We never get to find out Rui's trauma, but it's not needed in order to understand anything about her personality. It's actually implied later on that something did happen for Rui to end up with the disabilities that she has now, rather than it being a congenital disability. While her trauma is physical, Hotaru's trauma is mental and caused by the bullying that he went through in junior high. Throughout the story, we're always able to understand Hotaru's perspective and inner thinking. We only get to see the world through his lens. Once their friendship is officially established, Hotaru reveals more of his inner thoughts, noting that Rui is a person that is willing to accept all of his flaws, despite the self-belief that he is a quote-unquote loser. Rui serves as a contradiction to Hotaru's perspective because despite his lack of self-confidence and social anxiety, she's never turned away from him. She makes Hotaru feel normal, even if it's just temporarily, and it signifies Rui's genuine friendship with Hotaru. She also serves as the reality outside of that mindset, where one might believe that everyone around them is judgmental and they tend to be more aloof in social settings. Ironically, there are people that whisper and talk amongst themselves about Rui, which contrasts how people with social anxiety can be worried about the perception of themselves and others, yet Hotaru doesn't experience any active bullying in school, while Rui doesn't have that mindset yet does endure that harassment. Throughout all of the fun times that the two spend together, Hotaru comes to a realization that despite the trauma of his past, his friendship with Rui is pleasant, and having someone to help open that shell for Hotaru helped him in accepting this friendship with her. As preschooler level as this might sound, he's understanding the value of friendship and connections with other people, rather than keeping to himself because it's quote, tiresome and troublesome. During an encounter with Hotaru's bully from junior high, Rui stands up for him as any good friend would. Hotaru, in his troubled mind and seeing that the bully has started to pick on Rui, attempts to stand up for her and rebel against him. It's in this moment that Hotaru's character development reaches its climax, where all this time he had been the one in the follower position, but now feels the need to take charge and finally break out of his shell. Hotaru calls out his bully for projecting his social flaws of not being able to properly communicate with others by lashing out on weaker and more obvious people like him. Even though Hotaru still ends up being one-upped by the bully, it demonstrates the acceptance of his own personality and social flaws, and in a lot of ways is the first step to improving those aspects, rather than the acknowledgement and denunciation of them. Even though this moment shows a great development in Hotaru's mindset, his weakness in confrontation makes him hesitant and regret wanting to speak out against the bully, still considering himself a loser and not good enough of a friend for Rui. Rui ends up hitting the bully enough to fall back, and it's here that Hotaru understands that she's strong enough to hold her own, rather than needing to pity her circumstances and protect her as a vulnerable person. When Hotaru saw Rui in the classroom alone, he felt the need to protect her and be by her. He liked that he was seen as needed by someone, and it's that kind of perception that objectively made her look down on her, even if it was out of sympathy. Hotaru's preconceived notions of Rui proved to be wrong. She isn't a sad and weak person, but a happy and strong one, evident by her interactions with Hotaru and her resilience through the numerous times where people were bullying and whispering about her. Rui is thankful for Hotaru's honesty and explains that nobody can escape from their feelings, so you shouldn't try to hide them. She admits that she had her own prejudgments about Hotaru, seeing him as meek and harmless, and somebody that would have treated her normally because of his timid nature. Rui assumed that someone of Hotaru's likeness wouldn't judge her, at least on a surface level, because of their weakness and likeliness that they wouldn't try to go against her. In this regard, Rui also perceived Hotaru as sympathetic and pitied him. They both looked down on each other. It's ironic that their yin-yang dynamic was formed through their assumptions about each other, and how despite their friendship seeming well, they both had hidden feelings about the other person. This isn't to say that their friendship wasn't genuine though, it was more so being held back by their preconceived notions. While there might still be some social awkwardness between the two, now that they've both acknowledged and accepted the other's feelings and person as a whole, they can really begin to have a strong connection. There's a lot of visual supplements in this one-shot that portrays the characters' personalities and dynamics with each other. Hotaru is almost always pointing his head downwards, signifying his reclusiveness and reluctance to interact with other people. He can't make eye contact with others, and he tends to step to Rui's blind spot, which he finds to be safe for himself because it's where she can't look at him. Both of which are directly stated in the story, but I'd like to add that I think it's another sign of Hotaru's reclusiveness, and adding on to the fact that he's too shy to be at the same level as her because he loves her, which is very cute if you think about it that way. Hotaru's haircut also portrays his reclusiveness because from a top-down angle, you never get to see his eyes, especially in combination with him lowering his head. There are a few recurring visual motifs, like how on the playground Rui is always on the upper side of the seesaw, while Hotaru's on the lower end, which plays even more into their dynamic. Whenever the two are by the climbing dome, Rui is always the one who climbs and asserts a higher position, while Hotaru is looking up at her, which could represent his admiration for her. The use of visual representation in this one-shot is very character-focused and appropriate given how the story revolves around the two protagonists who are opposites of each other, and there are many more examples that you can find on your own while reading. Kinji Kuraika, the author behind this one-shot, actually has a fair amount of self-published works and has been writing for quite a while, which you can find on his website. Judging from the Google translations of the synopses of these works, a fair amount of them are dark or include other disabilities, which seems to be a recurring theme in his works. It seems that a lot of these have the goal of giving some deeper meaning or thought about certain subjects, and I can commend him for that. There do seem to be some lighthearted stories mixed in here, so it's not all dark. I haven't read any of these, and I can't really, so I'm only able to make some sense based on the translated synopses, but I imagine if you like the writing in this one-shot, can handle some of these darker subjects, and are able to read Japanese, it might be worth looking into. I really like the writing in this one-shot, so who knows, maybe in the future I'll pick up some of these other stories. Also, apparently, all of his stories take place in the same universe, which is really cool, and I just wanted to point that out. Yuuki Hotate, who was the artist for the one-shot, also has some works of his own. Besides having a lot of illustrations that you can find on his Twitter and Pixiv, he's apparently written and illustrated a story in a Made in Abyss anthology, done the art for a manga adaptation of Koisuru Kiseichu, and a self-published story called A Witch of Caldera. And if you like the artwork from this one-shot, then I think checking out his social media would be a great time. We can't pretend like our preconceived notions don't affect our perceptions of other people and how we interact with them. It's only through our interactions with them that we learn their personalities and boundaries. Rather than trying to act a certain way around others based on our preconceived notions, we should just be natural with them and learn about them as a person, leading to strong, long-lasting, and real connections. If even two people of opposites are able to become friends, then surely any person can overcome their biases about others and befriend them, even despite societal, social, and self-pressures. By opening up about ourselves to those who we want to communicate with, we develop trust with one another and build relationships. Take care, and maybe I'll see you next time.